This week, Garmin is announcing a few new watches. The all-new Garmin Fenix 8, my video linked up in the top left corner somewhere, and this, the all-new Enduro 3, Garmin's ultra endurance, do everything watch. And Garmin actually dropped the price of this watch by $100, which to me is amazing because the Enduro is one of my absolute favorite watches. This is the watch that I'm gonna snag if I'm gonna go anywhere because it pretty much does everything and it never needs to be charged. So what's new with the Enduro 3? Well, now it does everything and more, and it never needs to be charged, even less. Let's check it out. Okay, if you're really short on time and you just want my super quick opinion about the Garmin Enduro 3, I actually think that this is a fantastic watch. I don't actually think that this is a huge update from the Enduro 2, but it's priced $100 less at $899, and it has a few minor changes and updates that definitely make it worth considering, especially if you're into long ultra running events, maybe bike packing, or even potentially multi-day hikes. All right, let's start with battery life because that's probably what you're here to see if you are interested in a watch like this. The Enduro 2 was an absolute beast when it came to battery life, going for about 34 days before needing to recharge. The Enduro 3, it's actually only up 2 more days at 36 days. So I'd kind of call that a wash. But if we start to consider Garmin's all-new Power Sapphire Solar lens, the story starts to change a little bit. And yes, the Enduro 2 also had solar. In both of these, we're estimating about 50,000 lux of daylight conditions worn outside. The Enduro 2 would tack on another dozen days or so, up to about 46 days. Using those same estimations, the Enduro 3 will now go up to 90 days with solar, which is a massive increase in battery life. And the results are similar when we look at GPS battery life. It's a modest update from 78 hours to 80 hours of use when we actually have it set in that all satellite systems mode. But where it gets crazy is with this new Power Sapphire Solar, the Enduro 3 gets about 48 additional hours compared to the Enduro 2, or an increase of about 50% in battery life in decently sunny conditions. And of course, this watch has that new dual band GPS chip that we've seen in Garmin's over the past 2 years or so. So it can connect to multiple types of satellite systems and even multiple frequencies of those satellite systems at the same time, and that does take a bit of a hit on battery life. You can expect about 15% less battery life if you are using the watch in that most aggressive, most accurate GPS setting possible. But Garmin also has a mode that they call Sat IQ, or the actual settings, it actually says like auto or something like that. But that should be on by default. And actually that's the mode that I would highly suggest that we all use, unless maybe you think you're gonna be pushing the battery life to its absolute max or something along those lines. But this mode will automatically switch between GPS modes depending on the quality of the GPS signal. So you kind of get the best of both worlds without having to like fiddle around with your settings in your GPS modes. Now, when I tested this watch in this mode, I didn't see any sort of issues with GPS accuracy. Here's a 12-miler that I did with my wife. I wore the Enduro 2 on one wrist and the Enduro 3 on the other. Again, they're both fantastic. Actually, I wouldn't actually say that there's one that's really any better than the other. Again, we would expect that because they're both using very similar GPS technologies, and probably the antenna design is very similar as well. There's also been another very minor hardware change to the Enduro line. The back plate here was a really nice, like, diamond-like coated titanium, but switching it to plastic actually reduces the weight of this watch a little bit. It's not a ton of weight, but it's now 63 grams as opposed to 70 grams from the Enduro 2. And I don't actually think that you're gonna notice that weight savings all that much, but it's kind of nice that Garmin was able to couple the weight savings from that small little bit of a change in material to also adding like additional price drop here. It's $100 cheaper. Now, also looking at the back, you might notice that the Enduro 3 has Garmin's newer heart rate sensor. Garmin calls it their 5th generation of their Elevate optical heart rate sensor. And I've actually done quite a few runs with the Garmin Enduro 3 on one wrist and the Enduro 2 on another wrist, and then even like a third or fourth watch connected to an ECG style chest heart rate monitor, which I think is extremely accurate as long as you have like a solid connection to your chest. But my heart rate data has been extremely accurate with this watch. Here's the kicker. My heart rate data from the Enduro 2 was also extremely accurate. So I'm not personally seeing a ton of improvement with the newer heart rate sensor, but this might be different depending on you guys and your particular activity type that you're doing. It definitely could be different depending on your own personal skin tone. I'm pasty white. I'm pretty sure that like an 85-year-old blind elderly man that's, out on the trails could actually visually see my heart rate from miles away. So your results may vary. But the other thing that's interesting about this new heart rate sensor is that it allows for your Garmin watch to perform an ECG reading. And that can help users record their heart rhythm, and it can check for signals of arterial fibrillation or AFib. Sometimes that is dependent upon the approval of your specific country's health regulatory committee. But Garmin's ECG app, it hasn't had a ton of pushback as far as I know from the FDA, which is the regulatory committee here in the United States. There's not a ton of other hardware changes that I can see with the Enduro 3. The UltraFit strap, the UltraFit band that comes with the Enduro, the Velcro now has like one side of it Velcros on the outside, whereas the other side Velcros on the inside. Like, it's such a minor change compared to the Enduro 2, which just had both Velcro pieces on the outside. Not a huge deal, but people love those UltraFit watch bands. With this release, actually, Garmin is actually going to be selling a few more sizes, and it looks like colors of options within this UltraFit watch band. And I think that'll be nice because it'll work with other Garmin watches. They cost about $40 if that's something that you're interested in. But on the software side of things, there's something new here called Garmin Share, which allows you to share saved locations, workouts, and courses with other Garmin devices. You can kind of think of it like AirDrop for your Garmin watch. It'll share basic data, and it'll share it directly from watch to watch. So that might be nice if you guys are going out for a run with buddies and you just want to share the course really quickly. And there's also new maps on the Enduro 3, and in here you can also do something new called dynamic round tripping. So you can actually set a destination for your run or your hike or your bike ride perhaps. And the watch will generate dynamic routes that will continuously adjust to help you stay on schedule, even if you do go off the original path. And it's all done on the watch, which is super, super cool. There's also a new trail run VO2 max metric, and then there's new Garmin Messenger app capabilities. So if you do have your phone with you, you can now send and receive messages directly on your watch. So just a quick comparison here, just in case this video has you confused about whether or not this is a good option for you. Here's how this watch looks next to the previous edition of the Enduro. That's the Enduro 2 there. And then here's how this looks next to the Garmin Forerunner 965. And the 965 is actually interesting because it actually has the same size display as the Enduro. It's a 1.4 inch display. Only the 965 has an AMOLED display, which is significantly brighter, especially in indoor conditions, versus a MIPS style or memory and pixel on the Enduro. But that display, the AMOLED display, does come with the cost of battery life. So you might only get, say, like half the battery life that you would have gotten otherwise if it was a memory and pixel display. But here's also the Enduro 3 next to the Apple Watch Ultra, just in case you're maybe looking for a watch that only last 2 or 3 days as opposed to a full month here with the Enduro 3. And then here's the Enduro 3 next to the 47mm Garmin Epix Gen 2. I also have reviews of the Suunto Race and the Coros Vertix 2S if you are looking for more comparable watches or watches that are designed more specifically for ultra running. Okay, overall, my initial impressions of the Garmin Enduro 3 are really quite good. I'm probably most impressed with the new solar capabilities and just how helpful it is with battery life on this device. But I also haven't had this watch all that long, and I actually haven't been able to dive into a lot of the newer software features. But what do you guys think? Is this something that you guys would consider? If so, what would you use it for? Would you guys use it for like ultra runs, or for me personally, I actually just never like having to charge this device. But let me know if you'd like me to do a more in-depth review of the Enduro 3, maybe a review after having used it for 100 days or something like that. But either way, GPS watch or no watch at all, I really do hope that you guys are getting out there, swimming, biking, running, rinsing, and repeating it all over again. And we will see you guys on the next one.